welcome back. My name is Nick, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to install a rear derailleur extender hanger and talk about the reasons why you might want to use one of these on your road bike. In today's video I'll be using the wolftooth Road Link, which is a derailleur hanger extender, and I purchased this with my own money for a retail price of about $20 US. I also have a cheaper version of one of these rear derailleur hanger extenders made by Sunrace on another bike, and this one was made in USA. That's why it's probably a little more pricey. Please note that it does say for Shimano 10-speed and 11-speed road drivetrains with a double up to 1136 for the maximum tooth and an 1140 tooth cassette for a 1x setup. It does say that this is made out of stainless steel, so it will add a little bit of weight over an aluminum version. I'm not sure if they make an aluminum. This is what you have, 9.5 grams for that, plus the bolt brings it up to 16.1 grams of additional weight. Let's take a look at my drivetrain right now. You can see that there's an 1136, maybe you can't tell it's 1136, but I put 1136 cassette on there, and it doesn't quite work in the 36 tooth because the rear derailleur here does not go low enough to accommodate it, and therefore the jockey wheel, or the upper jockey wheel here, rubs and hits gear 1. So let me show you that. So I'll start off in gear 3 here. As you can see, it spins pretty smoothly, not too many excessive noise. Here's gear 2, and it also spins smoothly. Then I get to gear 1. So as you can see, this gear 1, it doesn't work. It binds too much, and when you put power on it, it still makes a lot of noise and it binds. In the center of the picture here, you can see that I've even put the B-screw upside down to try to push this as far back as possible. And even under these circumstances with the B-screw all the way out, it couldn't go any further than this. Otherwise, it wouldn't touch the connection on the rear derailleur hanger here. So that's the furthest I could go, and it's still binds. So I do need the extender to get the low gears on my road bike. Now, because I'm adding something to the rear derailleur and it may affect the chain length, the first thing I want to do is make sure I have enough chain length so I don't destroy anything while I'm pedaling in big. So the first thing I'm going to do is shift to the big ring in the front and then slowly shift to the largest cassette tooth in the rear to make sure I have enough chain flexibility in the rear derailleur. So I'm in 3rd gear in the rear and I'm in the big tooth in the front, and I'm going to slowly shift up, and you can see the rear derailleur hanger is getting more and more extended, and now this is in 1st gear and it looks already quite extended. So if I add more, it looks like it can't go too much more. It could go a little bit, so maybe I could add the rear derailleur hanger and it should be okay. So I just got to be real careful after I add it to make sure there's enough chain slack. The next step I want to do if I'm going to install the extender is to shift into the lowest gear in the rear and the small chain ring in the front to provide a lot of chain slack for the rear derailleur. So that should be actually quite simple. Just shift down and bring it all the way down. Even when I'm in the small chain ring up front and the small in the rear, you can see that there's still not enough derailleur capacity for this to work properly. So I just make sure that I'm not in the small one front and small in the rear, or maybe even, let's see, I can't use the lowest 2 gears. I can go all the way up to gear number 8. Now you might only need a 5mm hex Allen wrench to go ahead and loosen the rear derailleur off of the bike's rear derailleur hanger, and then you can go ahead and start the process to install the wolftooth rear derailleur hanger. I went ahead and put some anti-seize lubricant on the bolt itself, so I could go ahead and install that on. So just go ahead and screw it in, and let me tell you something about this. Now, there isn't one universal size for rear derailleur hangers. They all differ depending on the frame manufacturer and how it's built. So there's no specific, to my knowledge, exact length, like it has to be in the 7 o'clock position exactly, 1.25 centimeters from the center of the axle. I don't know of any exact standards. So if you look at this, and I put this on, you could always move this left and right. So let me show you that when I install this. So just like there, you could adapt the B screw to push the derailleur forward and backwards. You could move this left and right. This only goes to 6 o'clock at most and goes to about 9 o'clock. And the further away you want it parallel. So if you want it real far away, you're going to put it about, I'd say, still 7 o'clock position, furthest away from the axle. Imagine if this reversed all the way, then it's going to push the derailleur even closer. So if you want it real far from the cassette, you're going to put it at this position. If you don't want it as far, you're going to move it closer with a different angle. Since it was barely rubbing, or not that significant, I'm going to start off with a 6 o'clock position, which should bring it a little closer. So go ahead and put that in, and then for the purpose of this, I actually do need a 2 or 3 millimeter here to remove the B screw that I did install backwards beforehand. A quick tip here is if you can't, it's kind of hard, you don't have any space to screw this B screw in because the hanger's in the way, go ahead and start shifting to a larger gear and it opens up space. So I could go ahead and stick the B screw right back in and screw it in without the derailleur hanger and the jockey wheels getting in the way. After you screw on the B screw just a little bit right here, go ahead and take the rear derailleur with the 5 millimeter, line it up. You may have to turn it a little bit. I also shifted, make sure that this was shifted back to the lowest gear. Give it a little twist, and then go ahead and line it up with the rear derailleur extender, and just go ahead and use your Allen and screw it in. Now that it's installed, take a look at the low. There's still a lot of slack here, and that's not good. You don't want that. So you could tighten the B screw a little bit like this in order to tighten this area. You want to pull it, tighten this B screw. It's going to push this way and rotate the rear derailleur possibly to give more slack. So that's the first thing I'd like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this and see if it tightens the rear. So I've tightened just this B screw here, and already you could tell it's quite a bit more tight. So I'm tightening it here, and you can see the chain's getting a little tighter because it's rotating this rear derailleur. It was forward like this and it's pushing it back. Now that because it still rubs on the bottom here, it's still not a usable gear, but it's a little better than it was before. Also take a look here, the distance between the jockey wheel and the lowest tooth. It looks like a good inch or maybe 2 to 3 centimeters. So that's really going to affect shifting in the higher gears or these lower gears. For higher gears, it's not going to shift as smoothly or as precise. Now shifting back up to first gear, that extra length here should give us enough space to go ahead and clear in first gear. And it looks like it does. In first gear, we don't have any more binding or rubbing, so it should be good in first gear. I'm going to go ahead and shift to the larger chainring in the front here, and then make sure that I still have enough clearance. But first I want to go to a lower gear to make sure I can make the shift. Get up the big ring and slowly make my way up. That second gear is nice and slow. And it looks like it's not jumping in right now. This is not going to first gear. I may have to adjust my high-low limit screws. So here's the low limit screw. I'm going to have to give it a good maybe half turn to make it looser. And let's go ahead and see if it shifts in. And sure enough, that did the trick. It shifts into the first gear now. So it does fit in big gear. However, I wouldn't want to be riding this because it may put a lot of pressure and tension on the spring. So I'm going to go ahead and immediately jump back down to the lower gear so I relieve some of the tension in the rear derailleur spring. With your 5mm wrench, go ahead and tighten up your rear derailleur and the rear derailleur extension to make sure it's nice and snug on there. Then you can go ahead and run through the gears again to make sure that they shift through your gears. So when I get to about this gear, I typically go up to my big chain ring. And I don't use the 50/11/2 walked in. And you can see now it's not shifting. Actually it is, it already shifted. Maybe it shifted a little too soon. It takes a little moment longer to shift. But it is still pretty smooth, and all I did was change the lower limit screw. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more or how to get lower gears on your road bike, consider subscribing if you haven't already. I plan to make some more videos in the upcoming future. Thanks for subscribing if you already do, and appreciate the thumbs up. Thank you, and have a most wonderful day.